Hi everyone. There we go. Sent myself scrambling desperately due to setting off the wrong intro video and only having a minute and a half to sort myself instead of about 6.5 minutes. But it's all good. It's all good. How are you? We're all good. Yeah. Hi. Welcome to Telling Tales. This is a kind of hangout, chill, stream, launch party thing for a couple of series we've got coming up. It's not just me. Don't worry. That would be really, really dull and boring. Instead, we have one of our other wonderful GMs on with me, along with a bunch of other people. But let's say hi to Johnny first. Oh my God, 2 GMs, 1 stream.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
I don't think you're meant to have this kind of thing happen. It's like crossing the streams in Ghostbusters.
Unless you were to do some kind of thing. No, let's keep that secret for future Telling Tales things. Maybe what I was just about.
Like a kind of.
Let's do that another time.
Like a kind of Exquisite Corpse role-playing thing, like crossover GM.
Yeah,
that
could be fun. Maybe.
You know, I've done this for a long time, Johnny. Not the streaming. Anyone? Well, I just proved that. But the role-playing, and I've never done anything like that. Never done shared GM stuff.
Yeah.
Possibly because I'm an absolute control freak.
You can just tell me what to say, Matt, and everything will be fine. I don't mind that.
That's you keep your kinks to yourself, John. All right, let's bring on the rest of the people who are going to be involved in this stream. We have, who do we have? We've got a Steve. There's a Steve. Hello, Steve. We got a Chris. We've got an Inga. And we've got a Justin. Look at that. Amazing. And it actually kept the cam layout I set before we set ourselves going. How wonderful. It's almost as if I intended it. I didn't.
Cool.
I didn't. That's a happy accident. Okay. So we are going to be setting off a few new series over the next month or so, month-ish or so, because 2 of our series have either come to a close or are going to come to a close. One of those is Mondays. I'm fine. It's all fine. One of those is Mondays, which Johnny's been running Call of Cthulhu on, which is has been a wonderful game, very popular, very atmospheric, slow burn cosmic horror. If you missed that, it's available in VOD form over on our YouTube. I probably should have done the promo thing at the beginning, but the hell with it. It's a chill stream. All the links are below. You know what to do. Call of Cthulhu wrapped up after 3 arcs, 3 very good arcs, and so instead, starting not tomorrow, but the following Monday, I believe that's right, isn't it?
The 25th, yeah.
25th, yeah. Johnny, why don't you tell the people what you'll be running and who'll be playing in that?
Sure. I'm going to be running a game from a company called Agate RPG, which is called Shadows of Esteren. So it's basically a low fantasy RPG based kind of partly around like Celtic mythology, and it's not your sort of D&D high fantasy, so it's not wizards slinging spells at each other. There is, as far as the player characters are concerned, there might be magic in a kind of people making potions or casting spells in a sort of more ritualistic sense than simply waving a wand at somebody or that kind of thing. And there may be things lurking in the woods or in this cave or whatever, but it's not sort of, you're not fighting a goblin or an orc. All the player characters are human. There are no other player character races. And it's supposed to be very sort of interpersonal relationship based, kind of just using this setting as a place for those interactions to occur. So yeah, I think it's going to be really nice. I think it's an RPG that not necessarily that many people will have played or maybe even heard of. I got lucky in that a group that I play with, somebody ran it for us, and I picked up a bunch of the stuff. I got lucky enough to meet the people who make the game at UK Games Expo a couple of times, and they're all really nice. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of. I've not run it before, so I've played it, but I've not run it before. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it is to run.
Yeah, right. I hadn't heard of it. When did it first come out?
2013, I want to say, but that may be wrong. I'm shuffling quickly through my book now to see if it has a release date.
You have yourself a book that. Well, I'm using props, Johnny. Why don't you waggle the book at us?
2012, November 2012. It says this
November
was printed.
2012. There we
So
go.
close. So close.
Yeah, so this is the prologue. So this is book 0. Book 1 is called Universe, which is sort of the main the main sort of rule book and setting book, and it's written from the perspective of the inhabitants of the world as well, which is quite a cool way to get through it. A lot of it is in in specific sections. Things will be written as sort of a letter from somebody to somebody else that sets out things that are happening and kind of tries to get you into the setting a bit, which I quite like as a way of doing a setting book and a core book.
Yeah, nice. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that 3 of the wonderful people on this stream with us now are going to be playing Shadows of Esteren with you, along with some others. Why don't you tell us who they are, who's coming from Call of Cthulhu, who's jumping ship, who's getting the lucky Monday nights?
So Steve, Inga, and Sam, who is not with us this evening, unfortunately, are continuing from Call of Cthulhu into Shadows of Esteren. Matt has some other commitments at the moment. The other Matt, not this Matt. This Matt is going to be, well, he does have other commitments, but it's the other things on the stream. Our Matt that you might know from Call of Cthulhu is unable to join us, at least for the first story in here. He said that he may end up open to doing more stuff later. And Justin is also coming to join us, moving from Tuesday nights.
That's great.
To join us on Mondays, which will be great.
It's going to be great. Loving it.
I'm really looking forward to
it. Tuesday nights shutting down, in case anyone was wondering, essentially. Or, to be more accurate, moving to Thursdays. Yeah, so we got 3 of those Shadows of Esteren players on board. Like, have you? Like, I'm right in saying that that character creation is this week. So I'm not sure how much
correct
people have dipped into the lore or the system or anything like that. Yeah, any insights or things that people are anticipating from Shadows of Esteren?
Yeah, the system looks really good. Like, I've only looked through the character creation bits and some of the world building bits, but like the way, as Johnny says, the way the book's laid out is really nice with the different accounts. I think I've got a few ideas for a character, so I was looking up some areas. Yeah, looks good.
Cool.
Yeah, I have. I need to do some reading. I am coming to this pretty much. I think there was I've posted a link to the. There's an FAQ document, 20 questions document that I posted in chat, and I think the thing that sold it for me was probably question number 7 on there, which was talking about the main sources of inspiration for the game, and they talked about like Tim Burton's universe, Sleepy Hollow, the movie Dark City. Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, Princess Mononoke, all sorts of things. And so that was, when I read that, I thought, okay, yeah, that sounds good. But yeah, I need to do a lot of reading before this Wednesday, I think.
From having to flick through it, honestly, the thing that would have reminded me, but this is probably showing my age, I think Steve might be able to know what I'm talking about, and maybe Chris, but because they talked about this kind of like rugged romanticism and not grim dark, but certainly more like grounded fanciness with like strong, elements of Celtic mythology and stuff. And the thing that immediately occurred to me was the 80s TV series Robin of Sherwood, which was very like that.
That goes back a bit.
Good. Well, there's a character idea.
The thing that I like about Shadows of Esteren is it does describe itself as quite a dark world with things, potentially different strings being pulled in different places. But it also says somewhere that basically the inhabitants of the world are mostly quite happy. It's not like everybody's miserable all the time. It's like it does say that death is a big part of the world because it's kind of people get ill. It's quite sort of realistic in the sense of it's essentially the olden days and people starve and people get ill, but people are also not constantly miserable, which I quite like because you do feel like some settings are kind of like everything's awful for everyone all the time, and it's kind of like that isn't what this is trying to be. You will have conversations with NPCs who will be having a nice day. It's not sort of everything's awful all the time.
And there's that, it's a kind of, it's quite a postmodern sensibility of, I say postmodern, post-Victorian sensibility. People in the past just lived these grubby, horrible little lives. And it's just not true. It's why you get stuff like, you watch films set in medieval Europe where the towns are just full of shit and mud and like everyone's caked in crap all the time. It's like people couldn't exist like that. Are you mad? But or they'd all have died. So yeah, it's no, I appreciate that. It's good. I know. I could see Justin smiling there because he could sense me starting to go off on one of my rants. Well,
it's a party stream. If we want to go off on rants, that's what we can do.
Oh, cool. So no one's got anything for the next 4 hours. Let's do this thing. Yeah, no, that sounds really good. How do you anticipate it? Like, I don't know. Obviously, it's a different setting and stuff, but how do you anticipate it, like mood-wise, being different from Call of Cthulhu? And like, that's not just Johnny; that's open to everyone, I guess, who's involved. Not you, Chris.
From my perspective, it is. How do I put this? The players will be more likely to overcome the challenges put in front of them.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's probably as much as I need to say, really. Or feel like they can. That doesn't mean that I'm saying they can. I just mean it will. Things will probably feel more achievable and less apocalyptic. I think for the players. I'm
curious to know, like, a feature of any long-running Cthulhu character is the inevitable decline into, terrified, like, twitching, gibbering existence, or turning into a fish.
Or both.
Or both.
He's talking from personal experience there, folks. I would just like to...
So I'm curious to know what, like, whether or not it's likely that characters will be able to hold on to their naivety or like, not naivety, but like, ideals in this setting, or is it like Cthulhu that was just strip everything from a character over time? Do you think which way it's going to go?
There is a sanity mechanic in this. You'll all be glad to know. However, part of the system is, in terms of character creation, is there are 5 ways, which are sort of the sort of different facets of a character. So if you have which tend to be kind of your ideals will often be based kind of around those. So typically something that you feel very strongly about will be in one of your higher way stats, in which case the idea is that you play the character towards that. So it's unlikely that your character would completely give up on something that they kind of feel strongly about in this, I think. While it's, like I said, it's, I hate comparing everything to D&D, but this is a fantasy setting, and that's kind of an easy way to compare the differences, compare and contrast is with D&D. These aren't heroes. You're still relatively normal people, but probably slightly above a standard person normally. Although the character I played in Shadows of Esteren was worse than a normal person, which was fun.
In terms of competence or morality?
Competence. So I chose to play somebody who had been basically bedridden from the ages of 11 to 19 because one bit that stuck out to me in the book is that basically everybody joins the kind of guard for a year. So you have a base stat for your sort of fighting skill. And I went, I'd like to break that, please, and not have done that, have that fighting skill because I was really ill. So my character's backstory was basically, that I was bedridden. So I had a lot of book smarts, and it made a really nice kind of interaction between me and one of the other characters where they kind of took care of me because I was this sort of weakling that was coming along because I'd got kind of dragged into it, and then they were sort of throwing themselves in front of me at any time I was in danger, which was quite nice. So yeah, I think basically it's not Call of Cthulhu in the sense that you are definitely gonna get ripped to shreds either physically or mentally by the end of it. But in terms of there is a sanity thing, so
it's
you
like
can kind
horror
of have a bit of but it's all kind of in the background until it's not. If that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Just to like grab several people or different people from around the table. Inga, am I right in saying this is your third roleplay system? Is that right?
Well, I've done a few of the one shots, so
of course you have. Yeah, of course you have.
Yeah,
but like third campaign system.
Exactly. So D&D, Call of Cthulhu, which was the first time I played Call of Cthulhu, and this will be the first time I played Shadows of Esteren as well.
I mean, to a certain degree, then it's interesting because you could argue this is D&D meets Call of Cthulhu, or like certainly in elements of it, it's like the fantasy meets horror sort of thing.
See what it kind of sounds like. I've got to say that's not what sprang to mind when I started kind of reading through it. I'm similar to Steve. I've not read through a whole load of stuff just yet. I've got some plans to do some of that tomorrow. But I do remember reading through the 20 questions thing that you posted, Steve, and thinking this sounds like Johnny. Like I can picture what's and it did get me hyped because I really enjoyed Call of Cthulhu, and I did think it had a similar sort of feel to that, or at least the way that you ran Call of Cthulhu. Like I say, that's been my own experience of it. It's kind of interesting even hearing you, Justin, saying that, the sort of inevitable, twitching, gibbering kind of wreck kind of thing. Because I don't feel like we quite got there with our game. Like certainly not the second, or like, stripping away everything that you are and stuff. Like especially the second arc, I don't think we quite got to that. And it didn't feel that apocalyptic because my character and I as a player didn't really know what was going on because I didn't really know much about the lore and stuff. Definitely felt a bit more apocalyptic in the third arc, but even then, like somehow I managed to avoid, becoming a twitching, gibbering wreck. Possibly ended up. Well, I'm not going to spoiler. Should I?
No, let's not spoil it just in case. No.
But
just in case this.
Well, I'm not entirely sure how we all ended up. One way or the other.
The best kind of ending.
Yeah. So there was some uncertainty there about exactly what happened to us all, but yeah. So like maybe it wasn't like the typical. But it was also not a super long running campaign either. Obviously, we did the 3 shortish arcs, but I guess they were all about 2 months, right?
And we did spend a lot of that talking.
We did spend a lot of it talking. Yeah.
I think each arc only took place over a maximum of like 4 days or something, so it wasn't a particularly long time for things to happen.
But it was like really sort of like focused in. Like there's a real sort of magnifying glass element of like it almost turns into like a daily procedural because of the focus on each like individual person's actions. I think like for me, I can see how Shadows of Esteren follows on really well from Call of Cthulhu with Johnny as a GM specifically, because Johnny focuses so much more on the kind of folk horror aspects of Call of Cthulhu than on, like, you know, the more kind of grand apocalyptic, like vast, you know, secret cults and dead gods and all this kind of thing. I mean, there's aspects of that, but like so much of it, it's like stripped down to like but like more of a bare bones story. And like, obviously that's presumably the feel of the horror in Shadows of Esteren as well, or at least that's the sense I get of it, that it's like, you know, there is a monster in a cave, but it's not that you're like shining knights going to kill it. It's like, you know, it's more of a like a Beowulf feel to it. I say that, even though Beowulf's a big hero going to kill something, but before Beowulf arrives in Beowulf, there's no sense of like, oh, we must. It's just Grendel is this like implacable monstrosity, and it's just like you've got to learn to survive living near a monster rather than having any chance of going to kill it or whatever. So it's cool. So yeah, Shadows of Esteren is kicking off on Monday 25th of November, and I think is the initial idea that we're planning a kind of a similar length arc of, like, I think you mentioned like an 8-episode stretch for a first arc, and then see where we go from there.
I think so. So I'm going to be running the pre-written from this book 0, which has 3 adventures in. So ties in quite nicely, following on from the Call of Cthulhu, having 3 stories. So yeah, again, it might be a similar thing that, you know, potentially if people have things come up and other people want to jump in, we may have a rotating cast of players potentially. But yeah, I think it'll probably be something around that similar length. I like to say 8 to 10, and then those ended up being 8. But yeah, somewhere around there, I think.
Steve's made a very good point in private chat. Yes, I did say 25th of November, and yes, I did mean 25th of October. A week tomorrow, if people are watching this live. But yeah, 25th, Monday, 25th October. What we'll do, if anyone's got any like questions or comments, by the way, throw them in the chat, and we'll bring them up at the end after we've talked our mouths off about everything else. But yeah, so this is a launch stream for not 1 but 2 series. So as well as Monday night switching to Shadows of Esteren on the 25th. Also, we'll be shutting down Tuesdays, which is Blades in the Dark. It will probably return in some form at some point, not least because it's very easy to run, and I appreciate that. But for the moment, Tuesdays will lie fallow, and we're switching to Thursdays with a prospective start date of the 4th of November. And that is going to be what we're just kind of calling our World of Darkness series, rather than, well, you'll understand why when I go on about it. So this is like a high concept mini campaign of a series of 6 story arcs, each sharing a slightly rotating cast of players. So the idea is, because we've got 5 players, the first 5 stories will have 4 players each, and each player will miss one of those arcs. The final one has all 5 of the players involved in the 6th arc, and the reason why that's such an odd sort of setup is because for anyone who isn't aware of them, and I'm sure nowadays there's a lot of people, there was a overarching system in the 90s called World of Darkness, or the Storyteller system, if you want to get mechanical about it, which had a number of urban horror, urban fantasy systems that operated in the same world, in the same IP, where you play different kinds of supernatural creature, the most famous of which is Vampire the Masquerade, which was essentially D&D in the 90s in terms of market dominance. And you have a whole bunch of others like Werewolf and Mage and Wraith and blah, blah, blah. And what we're doing is rotating between them and telling a series of interlinked stories, all taking place across the same 24-hour period in one city at one point in time in the year 1995. That I'm aware how high concept that sounds, and it is, and it's also to a certain degree a bit of a holy grail for World of Darkness fans because we're covering the big 5 systems and kind of, they're these beings that are on paper like operating all at the same time in the same world, but kind of it's always been this thing of, hey, that would actually be really hard to push together. We're getting around that a little bit by them being just interlinked stories rather than one big conglomerated story arc. But yeah, that's what we're doing. I hope that makes sense to people. When I explain it, I'm not entirely sure how much sense I'm making. But ultimately, to just sum it up, there's going to be 6 stories. The first of which is going to be this wonderful tome, Vampire the Masquerade, my extremely well-worn copy of it from 92, 93, something like that, which I often like to get this out to younger people, which is most people, and say things like, this cost me £15, which is true and depressing. So there we go. Yeah, Vampire the Masquerade, where you play... it's almost weird. You almost don't have to explain Vampire the Masquerade now, because so much vampire stuff since Vampire the Masquerade has either blatantly or subtly lifted off Vampire the Masquerade to the degree now where if you explain it to people, they're like, oh, that's a bit cliche. So you play vampires operating in like a secret society that rules the night, with different clans, with different motivations, and all trying to exist while fighting the beast within them that's constantly trying to take over. We already did have a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition series on our channel. If you're interested in that, go watch it. You'll probably be the first. So I'm not bitter about it.
Just cold.
It wasn't terribly popular, but it is all on YouTube. Well,
I watched it, Matt.
The rough break. I appreciate that, Johnny. I appreciate that.
I saw pretty much all of it.
I would hope so, Justin. I would hope so. Yeah, we won't be playing 5th edition for this one, though. This will all be under the purview of the 20th anniversary editions from Onyx Path. These physical copies I have aren't that, in case you're wondering. All my 20th anniversary editions are digital because I can't afford them because they're like that big. So I just get the digital editions instead. The second story we'll be running will be Werewolf the Apocalypse. Now, this, I have never seen another copy of this edition, ever in anyone's collection in any place. This is 1st edition, Werewolf the Apocalypse. This is the 2nd tabletop role-playing game I ever bought. It has a cool cover with the claw marks that open on like a forest. Ooh. And yeah, it's very old and appropriately dog-eared. And in that, you play werewolves that are essentially sort of 12-foot tall furry eco-warriors. It's got kind of like a strong sort of spiritualist bent to it. The werewolves kind of can go into a spirit world and stuff like that. And again, I remind you about stuff that has now become cliches. Vampires and werewolves hate each other's guts and will kill each other on sight, by and large. And the World of Darkness did it first, folks. They did it first to the degree that if you're familiar with the films Underworld, when the film series of Underworld came out, White Wolf, the publishers of World of Darkness, were paid off to not take them to court for an undisclosed fee. So there we go. The 3rd series will be Mage the Ascension. And all these are like 4-episode arcs, I should say, before you'll start going like, this sounds like a 6-year plan. So it'll be about a 6-month total runtime. Mage the Ascension is a very popular role-playing game, not in terms of how much it's been played. It's barely been played. But in theory, everyone loves the idea of it. It reimagines mages in the modern world as individuals who can just shift reality by their own will. It becomes very philosophical, a little up its own arse, but it's also wonderful and has an extremely influential magic system because there's no kind of like spells or specific things. It's just like, you can do things at this rough level of power. Now go and interpret that yourselves. So yeah,
I have a question.
Yes.
Will there be any spacefaring dinosaurs in this Mage campaign?
There will not.
Right. Never mind.
I don't get that reference. unless it wasn't a reference and you're just throwing it out there. He's not listening to me. Chris.
I just want to double check that previous answer. Should I interpret that as a challenge?
Well, yeah. I mean, technically in Mage, you can absolutely just create spacefaring dinosaurs and see how long that takes you before
I explode.
reality slams shut on you in horrible, horrible ways. The fourth one we'll be playing, and if you're a World of Darkness aficionado, you know where this is going now. It's going to be Wraith. Wraith the Oblivion, the most depressing role-playing game ever created. Where you play ghosts. Ghosts who have progressed onto a place called the Shadowlands, which is a sort of very grim layer on our world where you can still have access to the real world to a certain degree and exist in a place where in kind of eons past, older, more powerful ghosts have constructed vast necropolis cities where almost every building material and tool and item is forged from the screaming remnants of other ghosts. And all you have to do is constantly try and survive against the force of personal annihilation, as represented by Oblivion. It's cheery stuff. It's really cheery stuff. I think the only more depressing book I've ever read, role-playing wise, other than Wraith the Oblivion, is a Wraith the Oblivion expansion called Wraith the Great War, which is Wraith set in the First World War.
Nice.
Which, as you can imagine, yeah. I mean, without getting controversial, and I won't talk about whether they should or shouldn't have, Wraith the Oblivion also has a supplement about the concentration camps in World War II. So, it's cheery stuff. We won't be doing that, but we will be playing Wraith the Oblivion. And the final one, and sorry, folks, I just thought a bit of show and tell might be fun. So sorry if anyone's bored by this. Obviously, you could not get more different in the cover between the one I held up just before and the one I'm holding up now. This is the final of the Big Five of World of Darkness, Changeling the Dreaming, where you play basically a person who has like a fragment of the Fae, a fairy inside them that turns them into kind of half human, half fairy being. And they exist in a world where everything is layered over by glamour. Where we see kind of an abandoned building, they may see like a sort of castle where a dragon can be slain and all this kind of stuff. It is, generally speaking, I think most people would agree, a cheerier and more upbeat game than most of the World of Darkness ones, though it does have a thread running through it of like every changeling eventually succumbs to banality and like their fairy side like just shears away and leaves. They forget that they ever happened and they kind of leave this world of imagination and fantasy forever and just go back to humdrum existence, which for me honestly is maybe a bit more direct and personally saddening than most of the other big fantasy things. And then the sixth story will be characters from all five of these conglomerated together in a kind of story to wrap it all up.
Cool.
I love that we sort of talked in the sort of backstage a few times about like whether we do like a sort of tour of people's bookshelves and things. I love that we got a little slice of that just now.
A little slice of that, but let me tell you, Inge, if you like that, I'm planning on recording my system tour this week. People can see it. Here's a spoiler for it. There it is in the background. There, all those books on that shelf. But yeah, that's the plan. It's been something I've been kind of half planning in my head since I was about 15, which is a long time ago, for anyone who had any doubts. And yeah, it's going to be exciting and it's going to be challenging and a bit scary. But yeah,
one would hope with the systems
a lot. Yeah, you know what my rationale was behind this? It was like people didn't particularly seem to like Vampire 5th Edition, and I thought, I really do want to run something else, World of Darkness, and I thought if I'm going to do it, like I might as well run something I'm really happy to have run, even if it absolutely tanks on the channel. Like even if no one watches it, I'll be like, I'm so glad I actually did that. So,
watch it.
This is that. But watch it. It'll be really good. So the players we've got on board for World of Darkness, as I say, it's like slightly rotating in that like some series, some people will be in and some won't be. So on this very stream, the two people who will be taking part are Inga and Chris. And then on top of those fine folks, we have Pierre and Holly and John. So they will all be taking part as well. And the first installment of it will be Vampire. And as I say, that should start, fingers crossed, on Thursday, the 4th of November. And that should run for each of them should run for about 4 weeks, is the plan. And then we go to the next one. Chris will actually be sitting out on Vampire. As I say, each of the players is sitting out on one of the 5 first stories. So, yeah, terrifying.
I'm looking forward to watching it.
Good.
Yeah, should be good.
I'm glad. I think like just from talking to the group, I think everyone's feeling quite, I guess, inspired by the challenge of it, by like this, like, you know, contained set of stories in this same, like, yeah. I don't want to go too into it because I feel like I might start spoiling some of the elements I'm throwing into it. But
this might be a potential spoilery question. But I know obviously you said that they'll be interlinked. How much do you anticipate potentially needing to change what you're planning for the latest systems based on what happens in the earlier games?
I tell you what, I am this isn't spoilery. I'll tell you basically my solution to this is that while I will have structures laid out, rough structures and plot beats for each one, I'm not going to start fully developing the next story until the previous one is probably about 3/4 done. Because then what I can do is intentionally take elements from the previous one and weave it into the further ones so that the whole thing feels like a big, coherent. I'm trying to think of, like, you know, other TV series or whatever that have done this, where it all takes part at the same time and everything's like linked and there's crossover bits and stuff, and you just go, oh, cool, that's when that happened. And like,
yeah. I suppose it's not quite the same thing, but like, you know, kind of how, like, in some ways it's a bit like how The Wire looks at different elements of the same city and weaves them together over different series from the police departments. I mean, it's not the same thing. Yeah, from different perspectives on looking at the same kind of problem.
I mean, I'm not saying this will be The Wire of role-playing games.
No, be better.
It wouldn't be. It's not on me to make that kind of judgment.
Yeah, I think viewers at home should know that if Matt's involved, the plan will probably be incredibly ambitious in terms of how much work will have to go into it to make it good enough for Matt's like what he would be happy to put on a stream or even run at home. You know, because that tends to be the way that you run these long-spanning series.
Yeah, the work I do tend to put into like campaign stuff like this is the kind of work that people talk about. I often see, like, especially nowadays with like definitely a trend for like less work for storytellers and games masters to do, right? Like much more on improvisation or like spontaneous or co storytelling with your group and stuff. Like, I do see a lot of stuff on Reddit or wherever that's like, I can't believe I used to do this much work for a thing. And I look at that number and go, just that? So, yeah, maybe. We'll
There'll be a lot of work involved.
But yeah, like I say, to answer Inga's question, yeah, it won't all be written before I start, because precisely so it can feel like, you know, you'll do something in Changeling, and like you'll see something on a news report or something, and you'll be like, that happened in Werewolf. So it all clicks together, hopefully. Yeah.
How much reading of the systems when was the last time you read through the systems? Because I'm anticipating that there's going to be a period reading through these where you go, oh, I remember why I don't play this anymore. This is really
maybe
this mechanic, like, this bit of the story. I don't think that really would.
Mechanically, they're not. I wouldn't say they're horribly dated, but they're not modern either. Like, you're rolling big handfuls of dice and stuff. So it's not been too long since I went through the basic ones, because I ran an offline Werewolf campaign like.
Not so long ago.
Yeah, not so long ago, last year or something. And I've had a long-running vampire campaign for years now. But the actual specifics of each one, yeah, a long time for some of them. Like, I don't think I've read the rules for how specifically to play Changeling, like the things Changelings can do, since I was probably in my teens. So, yeah. Some of these I've never run. I've never run Wraith. No one's ever run Wraith. In the
not
history.
Really.
Humanity.
Not really run it.
I planned
not
all
the way
this
it's supposed
stuff.
to be run.
I planned all this stuff and went, oh, this will be cool. This will be interesting. No one ever runs some of these. And if anyone is a long-running viewer, they'll probably know that one channel we've talked about a fair bit about inspiring us to start doing this was the channel Stream of Blood, who are very good, and you should check them out. And do you know what they announced literally as soon as I started planning this? A Mage and a Wraith series. And a Werewolf one. Wankers.
They must be watching. They must be watching.
They are. They clearly are.
Clearly.
If Jared from Stream of Blood is what, look, it's fine, man. Just say that,
Look, maybe we'll get a payoff like from Underworld did.
Like with Underworld, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think the only other details I'll drop for this for now is that because I've been talking about it in rough terms, and I may have said these already somewhere. So if I'm speaking like it's a grand reveal and you already knew it, then sorry. But in case anyone was wondering, the setting of these is on one day in, I think I've said either June or July in 1995, and the city it's all set in is Cincinnati, Ohio.
And here I was hoping you'd set it in Southwest London so you could run into 3-year-old me.
That was the plan originally, and 3-year-old you was going to be the final boss. But no, I went for Cincinnati. Again, people who know me will roll their eyes at that because it is the home of my beloved Cincinnati Bengals.
The Tigers.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Tigers.
Bengal Tigers.
Cincinnati Sports Tigers.
The sports team. The team that does the sports.
Football Tigers.
I know them.
So that was a lot of blurb from me. A hell of a lot of blurb from me. Why don't we start with because Chris and Inga are here. Chris, why don't you talk to us about your experience with World of Darkness? Because you are probably the person on the crew with the second most experience to me in World of Darkness. And why don't you talk about some things you're looking forward to about this, and which of the systems are you looking forward to playing most?
Yes, World of Darkness was absolutely my D&D. I didn't play D&D until like 4 or 5 years into role playing, but did nothing but Vampire for literally years in the 90s and early 90s, which is why I'm skipping it, because I'm sick and tired of edgy teeth boys. I think I really teenage me really gelled with werewolves and the kind of hippie eco warrior having tools to actually affect change, and by tools I mean claws that do aggravated damage, rather than kind of, even back then, understanding the crushing realities of the losing battle we were fighting to maintain any kind of habitability on this wretched tomb world. I thoroughly loved Mage and tried to get as many people playing it as possible. I was very taken by the technocracy and tried to buy the technocracy book, but it was already out of print. I will say, looking through the 20th editions, I have been kind of in preparation to this. The artwork in the Mage, the physical Mage book I used to have, is just really powerful and abstract and kind of a breath of fresh air from some of the other system books. Wraith, never played it, never even heard of it. Sad golf ghosts, nobody cares. And Changeling.
That's a good attitude for someone who's playing Wraith.
Yeah, only because I could only get out of one of them. I'm going to do my very best to figure out how Wraith works, but
I think, Chris, you might have more in line with these Wraiths than you think. You might find that you might find yourself, a kindred spirit.
And of course, Changeling. We tried to play a bit of it. It resonates a lot with someone from Ireland's kind of. It's very much a Midwestern American's take on homunculus of Arthurian and She and Shalachus and all of these different kind of myths and legends kind of smashed into one. It seems more if Wraith is the Book of the Dead, then Changeling is a book more about childhood than any kind of attempt to ratify mythology into a game.
It is absolutely a very obvious metaphor for childhood. Yeah. Like if I want, whenever I talk about Changeling, if people want like inspiration for where like to go for like things that resonate with Changeling, I just go for movies like Labyrinth and Drop Dead Fred and stuff like that, because it's just about like becoming an adult and losing your imagination and your innocence and stuff like that.
I'm very much looking forward to blowing the dust off Changeling. I think I played it once, and the system is fine. I think the storyteller system is great because it allows these interactions, but also kind of limits. I mean, Mage is the counterexample, but it does limit how flexible the systems can be within their specific zones. Kind of looking forward to getting stuck in.
Good. I'm glad. Even if one of the 4 you're playing in is
zero interest.
Zero interest. Let's see if I can pique that interest through the course of that arc. Onto the kind of flip side of the experience, I guess. Inga, this is your first foray into World of Darkness, right?
It sure is. Yep. I didn't know that World of Darkness was a thing. I'd heard of Vampire the Masquerade. That was the only one I'd heard of as a system. Again, it kind of makes sense, as you said, like a lot of stuff is borrowed from things like Vampire and Werewolf and stuff. But yeah, no, I wasn't even familiar with Werewolf as a system either. So yeah, I'm aware of Vampire the Masquerade, but yeah, I've never played it. Never played any of the other systems, hadn't heard of any of the others. So yeah, total newbie with all of this. But yes, I'm really interested in it. Like again, kind of interested to see what the sort of alternative to D&D in the 90s sort of was. And really interested in the kind of the high concept, like the way those stories will interlink and everything. I don't know. I think there was a question that came through in the chat about what happens because obviously you just spoke through all the different systems, but what happens for the sixth game and what we do with our characters, and I'm quite interested to see what that's going to end up looking like as well. So it's probably just passing it back to you to talk a little bit more about that as well. But
yeah, sure. Like
thing. Yeah.
So that's a question from 42 here, and we've got it here. Yeah, that's a really expansive plan for World of Darkness. It definitely is. Will the players be all the same? Yeah, so like it's the same group of 5 players, but sometimes they miss an arc, if you see what I mean. So there's 5 players, and each of them play 4 of those first 5 arcs, and then they all play the 6th. Then will people be playing multiple characters in the final arc? No. So the plan that I have, and this is just a current plan, honestly, it might not survive contact with the enemy, and by that I mean the players. It depends how things go, but my notional plan is for that final group, for that final story, to be all 5 of the players, each playing one different system, whatever you call them, being. Right, so we've got one vampire, one werewolf, one mage, one wraith, one changeling, all in that final story together. We'll see how that works out, but that's the notional one. Honestly, like looking towards the end of that line is just like, yeah, fine. Like let's just get through like the things we have in front of us first. I have a rough idea of how they're interlinked thematically and I guess narratively and plot wise as well. But they are going to be kind of distinct stories in a way, just with threads running through them, and then those threads come together in the final story. That's the thing. Yeah.
What are the main obviously there's a lot of different types of thematically World of Darkness shares some similar trends, generally quite a cynical view of lots of parts of the world, but then Changeling less so. Are there any do you think what kind of the main kind of parts of those different and shared themes do you think you're going to want to either play up to most or incorporate most across the stories or within each individual story?
So, and this is where people start to think I'm incredibly pretentious. There will be themes of manipulation, of callousness, of duty. And also I want to very much highlight, because it's a chance to highlight these things in a situation where you don't usually get to highlight them quite so much. I really want to highlight the different viewpoints the different beings have, and the way that kind of like non-objective reality, you know, that like the series is going to be 5 different beings, you know, feeling the invisible elephant. Like they're going to be experiencing some similar things, or at least knowing about similar things and interpreting them in wildly different ways, because they all perceive their world in very different ways. So I suppose a theme is also going to be that kind of like the subjective reality, and like obviously they're doing it because they're different kinds of monster or whatever, like, but I want that to play out into a sense of like how, you know, different people at the same time in the same place can see things very differently.
Yeah. So like the urban landscape for the vampires might seem very much their domain, whereas for the werewolves,
it's like a no man's land. Yeah, it's hostile.
For changelings, that's a massive playground, and for wraiths, that's like some
lost
kind of
memory.
Lost memory, and I guess for mages, beneath them.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely, to a certain degree. A great theme of Mace is hubris, and kind of ascendancy.
So much to look forward to. So much to look forward to.
Absolutely. I think I've probably rambled. Oh, there we go. There's a question for you. Just on your like initial readings, is there any system you're particularly looking forward to more than any other? Any of them that leaps out at you?
I'm not sure. Like, so I think, like I say, Vampire was the one I was most familiar with, and it's the one we're starting with. So I've started reading a little bit more about that. So that's the one I'm probably feeling most connected to at the moment, just because I literally know more about it than any of the others. But honestly, all of them sound kind of interesting to me in one way or another. So the one that I'm skipping is Mage. So
yeah,
I've like done least kind of thinking about. I mean, I'd say thinking in like the vaguest possible terms.
Yeah.
The one I've probably done the least thinking about, because I know I'm skipping that one, and I'll just get to enjoy that as a spectator or an audience member. But yeah, no, I'm kind of interested. Like, I'm slightly afraid now at how everyone's talking about Wraith, but which is also partly making me think
it'll be fine. It'll be fine. If you tell you what, let's leave Inga mildly more terrified, because I'm not sure how much we've talked about shadows in Wraith, which is because Wraith is actually a kind of a troop game. In that you play your own character, your own Wraith, but you also play the shadow of another player's Wraith, like a separate entity. They're not like your Wraith isn't the same thing as that, and that shadow is constantly trying to tempt that Wraith to oblivion. They have like essentially, like, think about it like as magic points or mana or whatever. They have like these things they can offer that other player. Like, I can give you a boost on that die roll if you'll only do this. Just this really little thing
to me. I mean, again, we'll see how it plays out, but that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's Wraith is like, I talked about how Mage is a very loved game that's very rarely played. Wraith is so far down that scale, it's untrue. I've seen many people who probably should know better refer to it as unplayable. But we're going to play it.
So much to look forward to. So much to look forward to.
There we go. No, it'll be good. It'll be good stuff. If you've got comments or questions in the chat, throw them out there, please, folks. We'll cover them in exhaustive detail. And we've got a comment here from... Another one from 42. For Shadows of Esteren is a lot of setting hidden from the players, so they don't know what's possible.
So I'll give a slightly long answer to this because it's kind of important. So the game itself is set on the peninsula of Trikazel, which is 3 sort of lordships, and then there is mention of the continent, which the main way that the continent affects what happens on this peninsula is basically each of the 3 sort of areas have taken on one facet of things that have begun to happen on the continent. So one of the areas has taken on Magiants as a major thing, which you may notice is a cross between magic and science. So these are essentially scientists, basically. One area is still kind of a foothold of the Demorthen, which are basically like the druidic sort of nature. I can't think of the word.
Teachers.
Yeah. So basically, each of the areas, and the other one is the one. It's called the One Faith or something, I think. The temple and the religion of the one God. So that is obviously kind of like your theistic religion. And then you've got your kind of nature religion, and then your science. So the Demorthen have kind of always been here, and the other two areas have kind of been sort of not overrun, but kind of affected by these two things that have kind of come from the continent. So there are a lot of things that happen on the continent that may be affecting things in Trichazel that the players and the non-player characters wouldn't necessarily realize is as a result of this. There is also a full book called the Book of Secrets, which is meant to be entirely just for the GMs. So the universe book that I said about, book 1, that is kind of meant to be for everybody. And then the Book of Secrets is essentially sort of the GM's guide, in that it does go into a lot more of the background of what is kind of happening that is causing these things. So yes, the answer is essentially yes, a lot of the setting is hidden from the players. Whether there's not that much of what is hidden that will affect the 3 stories that I'm going to be doing initially, I don't think. But if it continues past that point, then there may be things that kind of come to light that make the players kind of go, "Oh, I didn't know that was kind of a thing." It's cool. It's a nice setting, and it's a simple system. It's just a D10 roll, adding a stat.
Is that true for like the system as well? Like, there's a lot like when I say the system, like. Obviously, I know you said like it's low fantasy, but like magic does kind of exist. It's just that obviously we don't know or interact with it. Like we're not wizards slinging spells. Again, does that mean that like a lot of what is possible within magic and the system from a GM perspective is also unknown to the characters or the players?
So you can actually have a character that has some sort of magical knowledge, either the Demorthen magic or Magiants. So the Magiantists use stuff that's called flux, basically, which always makes me think of Final Fantasy VII as like the sort of the sort of where the magic is coming from in Final. It kind of makes me think of that. So yeah, a lot of characters, player or non-player characters, will have no idea, but you can have a player character that has the Demorthen Mysteries stat you can put stuff into, and Magiants as well, and there is an occultism kind of stat as well, so you can be aware of stuff and you can do things. But again, it's sort of like if you were watching somebody in a film doing these things, it's sort of they might, I don't know, take a bit of a tree and give it to somebody, and that would might heal them or something, as opposed to with a wand. But a lot of player characters even would not necessarily know any of this stuff. They might, if they had an ill family member, they might take them to like a Demorthen person and ask them to help them. And, maybe kind of think that it will be okay if they take them there. But it's sort of unknown knowledge to a lot of people.
I think like it's interesting how so many systems try to get back to a more traditional understanding of magic as its own kind of science, as it's a real thing. It's something you can study and understand, and it takes great learning. And it's interesting how this system, with its like magisters who are kind of these techno wizards, it placing them on the same footing and not having kind of like hugely separate kind of, you know what I mean, like that kind of magical realism, and it seems to be doing it reasonably well.
Yeah, magic as natural philosophy as much as it is kind of spiritual manipulation.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's kind of reminds me a bit of it's almost like a cliche in like a lot of like sci-fi and stuff that you land on an alien planet and everyone can explain how all the tech works, which is probably not very realistic. If someone landed here and asked me to explain how my laptop works, I'd be like, I'd press the on button, and it does things. It kind of feels to me a little bit like that. Like there might be an awareness of something like magical medicine, but people couldn't explain it or necessarily do it themselves, or they might be aware that things that they might not be fully aware of exactly what's possible if they don't understand it enough.
It's like they're ill, take them to the healer, they'll sort it out. And they wouldn't necessarily have any idea what's going on over there, but what's going on over there, as somebody outside the game, you might realise is actually a little bit mystical.
Like, there's this little, as you're saying, like the whole thing's written as these kind of series of letters and things which may be unreliable narrators, but right at the start of one of the world settings there's a little kind of box where it talks about like a flower that's called like the 4 promises or something like that, or 3 promises, and it says there's a little kind of like this is a herb, it's useful for these kinds of things, it grows on the hill nearby where we live. It's been said that if you say a promise while holding one of these flowers, it's like you have to keep it, or something. There's something like that in it, and it's kind of like accumulated kind of like oral history and knowledge that goes into it. That's kind of magic is this thing that you can learn. You just have to know all the and these
all the folk why, like the hows and whys of the folk wisdom, as well as just the folk wisdom itself.
And these druids
I would say
are just really well learned in those things.
Yeah.
I would say that you're almost this almost is the folk tale that somebody in the future might tell.
Yeah.
Like you are essentially characters in a folk tale that somebody, 200 years in the future might go, oh, we don't touch that cave because this happened. You are the people going into that cave in this instance, kind of thing.
Yeah. One of what I really like it because one of my absolute bugbears in not even role-playing game, anything, is magic becoming humdrum. Like, because to me it's just then it's not special, it's not interesting, it's just, and you'll almost end up with that. And sorry, I'm gonna sink into my D&D bashing for a second again, but it's almost like that situation you get in modern D&D where if you're not a spellcaster, you're a weaker member of the party, and it's like that doesn't make spellcasters powerful and special. It makes everyone else uninteresting and weak, and it's almost this it's just a situation where spellcasting becomes the normal, not the unusual. And I don't want like fireball or whatever like from a magic user. I'm thinking like it's like different presentations of. Okay, so let's just to illustrate this, I'm going to talk about Merlin for a second. So you're going to.
I'm so glad I got him started. I love it when it gets started.
So like you see different representations of this character through all these like different things through all the years, and you see like modern representations of him where he's like throwing like fireballs around and stuff. That's not interesting. That's and I love superheroes, but that's a magical superhero. That's not an interesting character. Whereas if you look at him in stuff like the Once and Future King, or in kind of like the darker elements of it, like the original mythology, or like the film Excalibur from the 80s, which is great and everyone should watch that, or like there's a Bernard Cornwell trilogy which is bizarre because the guy wrote Sharp, right? But it is a fantastic trilogy called the Warlord Chronicles, which takes a kind of like realistic look at Arthur in the actual period. No one's in knightly armor and stuff. It's like actual kind of like early Anglo-Saxon setting, and the Merlin in that is kind of like there's lots of things that happen through the story where you're like, is that magic? Like, it could be magic, or he could just be really clever. Like, and that to me is much more interesting than, Cone of Cold.
Yeah, I mean, I love some D&D too, but yeah, I totally agree. Like, and it's one of the things I really enjoyed about Call of Cthulhu as well. But weirdly, is that like we were like normal people in you know, Scotland in the 1920s. It's very like rooted and real. And then it's like, wait, what is this weird, like we heard a weird noise, and it's like, it's just more unsettling than it should be. And like, you kind of like follow the thread like that. I really love that about Call of Cthulhu. So it's one of the things I'm really looking forward to with Shadows of Esteren as well.
It's scary because it's grounded, and you can imagine yourself being in that situation.
And again, with the magic, it's uncertain what you have. It's not, you do this and this is going to happen, and it's exactly as written there. It's kind of like I know what will happen as the person running the game, but even the players didn't know what might happen.
Yeah.
I just gave them the description that they had for the spell. And then it was kind of like, well, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Just it.
I just want to. I thought an interesting one. Maybe it's not interesting. So we've just talked about the things we like about the magic system in these kinds of games. This kind of like very, we just talked about it. But how does that compare to the best elements of magic in a game like Mage? To kind of bring it back to draw those threads together from all the.
Love what you're doing there.
Thank you. So obviously Mage is not like that at all. A very different kind of magic system. Almost like it started off as that, and by this point, magic has blossomed into such a complex and difficult to understand fruit that it is beyond comprehension.
Yeah, other than if you are like galaxy-brained, centuries-old mage who operates on such a completely different level to everyone around them, to the degree that they no longer really seem human.
Yeah, like Rick from Rick and Morty.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Rick would absolutely be a rebel technocrat. Yeah. So the thing about Mage, and trying not to talk about it systemically, because the system of it is fundamentally, the actual dice rolling mechanics are quite simple. It's just that it gives you a very loose framework and doesn't give you, you have X in this stat, therefore you can cast this specific thing. It gives you, what you can manipulate, what you can affect, and what you can change, and the different scales of that you might have, and then sets you loose. So as an example, it might give you, to use like an example of a more traditional wizardly thing or whatever, there's the different things you can affect in it called spheres. One of the spheres is called forces, which is being able to affect basic elements, essentially. Fire and water and earth and stone and metal and all things like this. And all the different levels within the sphere do tell you how much of it you can affect and how powerfully you can affect it. So if you want to cast a fireball, you can. You just have to look and go, like, how would this affect it? And one of the things that's so important to the system, and another thing I like about various magic systems and different IPs, is that there are constraints around it. Because the entire thing is governed by a concept called paradox, where basically the universe wants to be this shape. And anytime you start tweaking at the edge of it, you're pulling it out. And with the sheer force of your will. And if you pull too hard for your will to constrain it, it will snap back on you and cause all kinds of unpleasant effects, from kind of manifesting paradox spirits that will fuck with your day, to like sending you to like it just not working or backlashing on you, through to kind of the really nasty stuff like a state called quiet, which is where what happens when you cast your spell is that what you're doing is not shifting reality. What you're doing is creating a branched reality, a bubble, a reality bubble that now you are the only actual inhabitant of. And everything else is just a paradox created illusion of reality. And mages can exist in that unknowingly for centuries before they finally realize this isn't reality. And I love that. It's great. It's so good.
Really two ends of a spectrum there.
Yeah.
I think one of the key points about Storyteller as well is that most of the games that we've talked about in the Big Five are really like essentially are about survival rather than anything else. And Mage, the paradox mechanic in Mage, the Delirium and Werewolf, the Masquerade and Vampire, it's all about, here are the tools for you to do phenomenal things. You must never use them.
Yeah,
and I think
or
that's...
you must use them in these very super specific ways, or like things could go very, very badly for you. And I know that's actually a concept that a lot of people don't like, because for a lot of people, you know, role playing as well as other things are about, to a certain degree, about power fantasy, and that's fine. That's great. You know, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum with that. But one of the, like you say, one of the really distinct elements of the storyteller system is, yeah, you are a very powerful supernatural being. But you are only powerful compared to the unpowered, compared to the reality in the world around you. You're nothing, and that world does not care about you. Unless you're a werewolf, in which case the world literally does care about you, but it's also dying. So good luck, pal. Yeah, there we go. All right, folks, we've talked for quite a while now. Still happy to answer any comments or questions if anyone thinks about them, pops them in chat. I don't think there's anything we've already answered. Although if other people want to throw stuff in, that's great. But you know what we'll do? I'll do a quick blurb on all our promo stuff. Then we'll come back and we'll answer anything else, either from the panel here or from comments and chat, and then we'll draw a line under things. So yeah, to watch these two wonderful new series, for Shadows of Esteren, tune in on Monday the 25th of November. For World of Darkness, God damn it, Monday 25th October is what you want for Shadows of Esteren. Thursday, the 4th of November is what you want for World of Darkness. We have some other series ongoing at the moment. On Tuesdays, we have Blades in the Dark, but the finale of that, or at least the finale for now, is going to be this Tuesday. So do catch us for that. And we also have Symbaroum ongoing, like our kind of OG flagship system campaign thing on Wednesdays, and everything we stream on a weekly basis goes live at 8 o'clock in the evening BST. Other time zones are available. If you check down below, there's a bunch of links. There's links to our YouTube and to our Twitch. You're watching this on one of them. Please check out and subscribe and follow on the other. Our YouTube at this point has a huge catalogue of role-playing stuff. You're almost certain to find something you like in there. So please do check that out. There's links to our social media, to our Discord, which you can join up with and chat to us about role-playing and whatever. And there's a Patreon where we offer a bunch of lovely, lovely treats for your support. We also run monthly one-shots on the first Saturday of every month. The most recent of those was Wander Home, which is a lovely, adorable little pastoral fantasy, which is currently going live episodically on our YouTube. And the next one is going to be 2 days after World of Darkness, actually, Saturday the 6th of November. We're going to be running the current time appropriate Dune, because of the movie, not because we're slowly turning the planet into Arrakis. But there we are. We're going to be running Dune Adventures in the Imperium, which this guy, not that guy, but that guy over there is going to be GMing, Chris. I think so far, who got on board for that? John and Pierre?
Yeah.
Is it John and Pierre? But I think we've got some other people interested. And yeah, that should be a good one. And then for December, folks, get excited because the one shot for December will be voted on by you, the filthy general public. So we're going to post on our social media and on our Discord, and you can pick whichever one shot from this year that you want to see a sequel to. And we will make that sequel for you no matter what it is, whether it be, okay, here we go, there's 10 of them, right? Whether it be Alien or Troika, Mortborg, Fiasco, The Expanse, Honey Heist, One Ring, I've missed one, Wander Home,
Dungeon Friend,
Dungeon World. Should there be 10? Yeah, there should be 10, shouldn't there? What have I missed?
Or June coming up? Will that be one of the options?
That will be one of the options, but I've definitely missed one there.
Reminders at home.
Reminders at home. I feel really guilty if it comes someone else's run and they're like, "Oh, that's my only one," and you missed it. Yeah.
I don't think you have missed any, actually, just scrolling through the video history.
I might take a day off work so I can do June. I love June so much.
June's really good. Yeah. 42 says, "Can you beat the Criminal Bear?" I think Honey Heist is a strong competitor there. If I had to guess, folks, I think it'll be neck and neck between Alien and Honey Heist, because those are the two people still keep talking about. So we'll see, but that'll be up to you, and that'll be December's one shot. So yeah. Malice says, "So many good choices." And those are my choices. Yeah, I really think it'll come down to those two. And if they get equal numbers, me and Johnny will wrestle for it.
We could just combine them.
We should.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
God.
Yes.
I think we should
do
wrestle
that
for it
anyway.
with me dressed as a bear and you dressed as a xenomorph.
One character
Sure.
from every
So-
one shot.
So our usual local indie wrestling costumes, then. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
but swapped.
technically, I should be the bear, but
Yeah.
Alien Heist. Yes, that is what we will do. Cool. I'm not seeing anything in. Did we? I think we caught. I'll say it anyway. Again, thank you for the resubscription, Night Bites. I think I might have caught that the other session, but if not, you've got 2 shoutouts. That's great.
Cool.
It's all good. So, have we got any other quick questions from our little panel here, or shall we draw a line under this thing? Quick. Then don't ask me.
Well, I had a question for Johnny, but I don't know if else.
Go. No, go.
Stephen, you haven't asked very many
Let's go.
questions.
Let's go.
Well, I was thinking, we've talked a lot about how World of Darkness settings is often the world around you pressing down on the players, pushing them in directions. I don't know if that same politic is going to be part of Shadows of Esteren. What do you think are going to be those driving forces in that story?
It's a bit more of a sort of typical fantasy thing in that I think you will probably basically end up doing a job for somebody, which then kind of spirals and leads on to other things, as these things often do.
I guess in like games like Vampire, you're also often doing jobs for people, but that's not necessarily why you're doing the jobs for people. Often you kind of feel oppressed into that situation through whatever forces around you. Do you think
it's just a judgment on my vampire campaign?
Is Shadows of Esteren more a story about personal, personal drives and like wanting to aspirations that lead them to do things?
I would say it's definitely supposed to be more, sort of driven by your own sort of beliefs and wants and needs, rather than being forced into something, definitely. Unless, in some cases, it may be being forced into it potentially because you need some money to be able to eat, depending on what your character's backstory is. But yeah, I think... I think
that old chestnut. It's the only way I can motivate Steve to do anything in another game.
Like I said, a big part of the thing is the ways, and like they're supposed to be the kind of the personality traits in like lumped into 5 big sections. So they're kind of supposed to drive the character on in differing ways. What kind
of things are they?
There is the way of I've completely blanked on them all, but I can get them. The way of combativeness, way of creativity, way of empathy, way of reason, and way of conviction. So high or low things in those, they do tie to skills, but high or low things in them don't necessarily always mean good or bad. So if you're high in combativeness, you will typically be better at fighting, but also you may ruin something that requires some tact by jumping in head first. So there's always kind of a trade-off. If you're high in something, whereas if you're low in it, you'll probably be you might be better at interpersonal sort of steady talking, but you won't be as good in a fight. So there is always that balance. And the way it works, just as a quick thing, there are 5 of them, and you put a number between 1 and 5 in each of them, and you can only use each number once. So, yeah. So yeah, they're supposed to basically drive quite a lot of the interpersonal interactions and character kind of growth, I guess, throughout.
I do think it definitely will be interesting kind of looking on those aspects throughout the World of Darkness series as well, because it's fair to say that is a very common thing within the World of Darkness, the feeling of at least being coerced, and that coercion will continue until you manage to retain the personal power or the group power to break that chain. But definitely there's a difference between the systems on it in terms of how much that happens. But yeah, anything else anyone wants to chat about? We good?
I'm just excited to get to character creation for Shadows as well this week. So yeah,
character creation is the best part of roleplay.
I'm going to run a system where we just make characters for different systems. That's
seriously, that would be really popular. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, folks. We hope that was enjoyable. And yeah, please do catch Shadows of Esteren on Monday, the 25th of October, and World of Darkness on Thursday, the 4th of November. Yeah, thank you to Johnny for joining us for this, and thank you to the wonderful players as well, and thank you to all you guys out there. And we'll see you soon for Shadows and World of Darkness. Catch you soon, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.